The journey of a Sigma male is not a path one chooses from a map of conventional life options. It is a subterranean voyage, a series of seismic shifts occurring deep within the psyche, often invisible to the outside world until their effects are irrevocably felt. Society prepares individuals for a linear progression: learn, work, build a family, retire. But for the Sigma, this prescribed route feels like a poorly fitting costume, constricting and inauthentic. His life is not linear. It is a spiral of deconstruction and rebirth, a relentless pursuit of a truth that is his and is alone. This is not a personality type one aspires to. It is a destiny that unfolds, often with brutal force, sculpting an individual who operates on the periphery of understood social dynamics, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity. What follows is a deep dive into the 12 distinct, raw, and transformative stages that define this unique existential trajectory. Stage 1. The legacy shift from the ephemeral to the eternal. The legacy shift is perhaps the most profound and unexpected metamorphosis in the Sigma's life cycle. For the majority of his early and middle years, his existence is defined by a process of radical subtraction. He is in a constant state of rejection, rejecting societal systems, the hollow chase for external approval, and the weight of others' expectations. His identity is forged not by what he accumulates, but by what he discards. He pares away the non-essential, superficial friendships, conventional career ladders, and borrowed ideologies, until all that remains is a core of unassailable selfhood, sharp, defined, and entirely his own. This phase is characterized by a fierce, almost obsessive, drive to prove his worth, not to the crowd, but to himself. He thrives on being underestimated, using the doubt of others as a catalyst to fuel his solitary endeavors. However, the legacy shift marks the moment when this internal fuel source is depleted and replaced by a far more potent, enduring motivation. The hunger for recognition and the thrill of the challenge simply vanish. In their place emerges a single, sobering question: what will remain of my essence after I am gone? This is not a question born of ego or desire for posthumous fame. It is the antithesis of ego. The Sigma, by this stage, has been a keen observer of the cyclical nature of hype and relevance. He has watched cultural icons, once untouchable, fade into obscurity within a decade. He has witnessed powerful institutions crumble and seen personal reputations dismantled overnight by the fickle court of public opinion. He understands that fame is a flickering candle in the wind, and applause is a sound that dies the moment the hands stop clapping. Therefore, his focus pivots decisively from chasing relevance to building permanence. This pursuit manifests in various forms, all of which share a common thread of depth and substance. For some, it is a tangible body of work, a series of novels that dissect the human condition, a portfolio of art that challenges perception, a business built on an unshakable ethical foundation, or an invention that solves a fundamental problem. For others, the legacy is more abstract but no less real, a system of thought, a philosophical framework, or simply the indelible impact they have on the minds of those few they have mentored, teaching them to think with greater clarity, independence, and freedom. Stage 2. The mass-building era, the strategic camouflage. The mass-building era is one of the most critically misunderstood phases in the Sigma's development. To the casual observer, it may appear that he is attempting to conform, to mimic the social behaviors of those around him in a bid for acceptance. This interpretation could not be more mistaken. This stage is not about surrender. It is about sophisticated, long-term strategy. The Sigma realizes, often through painful early experiences, that his unvarnished, unfiltered self, his blunt honesty, his refusal to engage in meaningless social theater, his piercing ability to see through people's facades, creates unease, suspicion, and often hostility in the conventional world. Rather than dulling these inherent edges, which would be a form of self-mutilation, he learns to sheath them. The masks he constructs are not costumes he enjoys wearing. They are functional tools, shields meticulously crafted to grant him time, space, and access. In a corporate meeting, he can wear the mask of the agreeable colleague, smiling at appropriate moments, nodding in consensus, and offering a light laugh at a superior's joke that he finds banal. He does this not because he craves belonging, but because the mask allows him to study the room in perfect silence, unmolested. It is the behavioral equivalent of a predator's camouflage, a calculated stillness that is not weakness, but a prelude to understanding. This stage showcases the Sigma's genius for psychological adaptation. Where most people fall into a binary trap of either fully submitting to social pressure or loudly, performatively rebelling against it, the Sigma does neither. He engineers decoys, highly convincing simulacra of himself that put others at ease. When people are at ease, they let their guard down. They reveal their motives, their weaknesses, and their blind spots. This is where the Sigma's true power accumulates. He is consistently underestimated because his masks are so effective. People perceive him as harmless, perhaps even unremarkable or slightly clueless, while all the while he is compiling a vast, internal database on human behavior. Over years of practice, the application and removal of these masks becomes second nature, an effortless social reflex. This very fluidity can become unnerving to those who catch a fleeting, unguarded glimpse of what lies beneath. A sudden flash of intense focus, a razor-sharp observation, or a moment of profound silence that speaks volumes. That momentary rupture in the facade forces them to realize that the person they thought they knew was merely a carefully constructed and deliberately maintained surface. The Sigma never intends to hide forever. He hides just long enough for people around him to fully show their cards. And when he finally decides to remove the mask, it is never for sake of acceptance or approval. It is an act of strategic revelation, a move made from a position of unassailable strength, often for the purpose of establishing dominance or executing a precise plan. Stage 3. The ruthless deconstruction, the necessary annihilation. The stage of ruthless deconstruction is an internal earthquake that leaves a landscape of rubble in its wake. It is brutal because it is not a gentle, negotiated transition. It is a violent, non-negotiable purge. One day, the Sigma looks around at the life he has built and experiences a visceral, overwhelming realization. Much of it is cluttered with elements that do not authentically belong to him. The friendships he maintains out of habit or convenience, the job that provides a paycheck but feeds another man's dream, the daily habits he adopted merely to appear normal, the very identity he has presented the world to maintain a fragile peace. All of it suddenly feels like dead weight, an anchor chaining him to a false life. When a Sigma identifies dead weight, he does not patiently drag it along, hoping it will somehow become lighter. He severs it. He cuts it loose with decisiveness that can appear shockingly cold to outsiders. To friends and family, this looks like self-sabotage. They whisper that he's changed, that success has gone to his head, or that he's become cold and selfish. Former colleagues and employers may see him as reckless for walking away from a stable, promising career path. What they fundamentally fail to grasp is that the Sigma is not acting on a whim or an impulse. He is acting from a place of excruciating, hard-won clarity. He understands, on a cellular level, that he cannot move forward while carrying the burden of falsehood. Every inauthentic relationship is a drain on his finite energy. Every belief he upholds that isn't truly his own narrows his field of vision. Every false version of himself he projects to the world steals oxygen from his true self. Stage 4. The quiet rage, the forge of inner steel. The quiet rage is one of the most defining, yet least perceptible, stages a Sigma undergoes. It is not the explosive, dramatic anger society recognizes. No shouting, no slammed doors, no public confrontations. Externally, he may appear placid, composed, even more detached than usual, but internally, a volcanic process is underway. This is a slow-burning, grinding anger that accumulates over years or even decades of perceived betrayals, of being systematically underestimated, of watching people attempt to manipulate him, believing him to be a fool. He does not vent this rage outward. He contains it, allowing it to simmer at a constant, controlled temperature until it fundamentally reshapes him from the inside out. This stage is dangerous, not because of any external outburst, but because of what this contained pressure produces. The bottled intensity begins to act as a forge, recasting his personal boundaries. Behaviors and treatment he once tolerated, subtle manipulation, casual disrespect, the pressure can form to mediocrity, become absolute, non-negotiable no-go zones. His tolerance for inauthenticity shrinks to zero. From this point forward, he becomes exponentially harder to fool, harder to access emotionally, and impossible to exploit. It is crucial to understand that this transformation is not driven by bitterness or cynicism, but by a profound and unclouded clarity. He has seen too much, felt too much, and processed too much data on human behavior. He knows precisely where the cracks in people's facades are likely to appear. The rage acts as a purifying fire, incinerating the residual softness and naivete that once made him vulnerable, leaving behind a core of tempered steel. Stage 5. The resource hoarding stage, the silent arsenal. The resource hoarding stage is a period of immense, yet almost invisible, power accumulation. In a world where people feel compelled to broadcast every minor accomplishment, the Sigma operates on a contrary principle. The loudest person in the room is often the one with the least substantive value to offer. Consequently, instead of bragging, he collects. He becomes a silent curator of assets. He gathers skills that others dismiss as impractical or unnecessary, nurtures professional contacts that do not appear immediately valuable, files away insights that most people are too distracted to notice, and accumulates financial resources that he never, ever flaunts. To the outside world, it can seem as if he is in a state of passivity or stagnation. They see him working quietly in the background, declining to participate in the performative hustle, and assume he is being left behind. In reality, he is sharpening a vast arsenal in the dark. Every new proficiency he masters, every hard lesson learned from a failure, every connection quietly and genuinely cultivated, becomes another weapon in his hidden armory. By the time others become aware of his capabilities, he has often ascended to a level of competence and influence they can no longer hope to match. Stage 6. The recognition of leverage, the self as sovereign currency. The recognition of leverage is a pivotal stage where the Sigma self-perception undergoes a fundamental and empowering recalibration. For much of his life, he may have internally wrestled with the implicit pressure to validate his existence through the world's established games, the pursuit of status symbols, the display of wealth, the social climbing of hierarchical ladders. But through observation experience, he eventually notices a startling and consistent pattern. People adjust their behavior, make compromises, and even go out of their way to secure a sliver of his time, a fraction of his energy, or simply the privilege of his presence. This is the moment of epiphany. The click. He realizes he does not need to compete in their games because he himself is the prize. This realization is paradigm shifting. He ceases to chase external validation, impressive titles, or the approval of any group or institution. Instead, he begins to measure his worth in the one truly scarce and non-counterfeitable resource, his own sovereign self. His silence in a negotiation becomes more potent than another's eloquent speech. His decision to grace an event with his presence instantly elevates the perceived importance of that event. His refusal to engage with drama or nonsense creates a vacuum that makes manipulators and status seekers desperate to win his attention, thus inverting the power dynamic. Stage 7. The Observer's Curse, the unending X-ray vision. The Observer's Curse is a psychologically heavy stage that feels less like an acquired skill and more like a permanent, unchangeable setting in the Sigma's cognitive machinery. As a result of years, often decades, of practiced silence, social detachment, and intense study of human behavior, his perceptual abilities have been sharpened to a near supernatural degree. He no longer merely hears what people say. He deciphers what they consciously or unconsciously omit. The subtly forced laugh that betrays discomfort, the overcompensating tone that masks insecurity, the almost imperceptible microexpression that flashes across a face when a lie is told. His mind collects and processes his data instantaneously, whether he desires to or not. For him, walking into a social gathering is not a simple act of participation. It is like activating a psychological X-ray machine. The social mask people wear, their carefully constructed personas, become semi-transparent to his gaze. Initially, this heightened perception can feel like a superpower. He can predict betrayals long before they manifest, sense hidden agendas in a handshake, and spot desperation from across a room. This ability provides a significant defensive advantage. However, as time passes, the constant, involuntary intake of this subtextual information becomes mentally and emotionally draining. He cannot unsee what he sees. He knows when a confident colleague is secretly crumbling under pressure. He sees a friend who is fishing for compliments to patch a wounded ego. He picks up on the white lies and minor deceptions that most people would automatically filter out. This relentless analysis makes it impossible for him to ever fully relax in social settings. While others can bask in the comforting illusions of trust, camaraderie, or charismatic appeal, the Sigma is perpetually aware of the fissures and contradictions running beneath the surface. Stage 8. The brutal self-audit. The refiner's fire. The brutal self-audit is the stage that truly separates the Sigma from a vast majority of people. While most individuals spend a significant portion of their lives building and defending a fragile ego, constructing elaborate excuses for their failures, and clinging to comforting narratives that absolve them of responsibility, the Sigma engages in the exact opposite process. He turns the blade of his scrutiny inward. He subjects his own character, motivations, and actions to a relentless, unflourishing examination, devoid of filters, self-pity, or sugarcoating. This process is inherently savage and uncomfortable. It leaves no room for psychological hiding places. He will call himself out for periods of laziness and procrastination, for poor decisions made from emotion rather than logic, for clinging to toxic habits that provide short-term comfort but long-term stagnation, and for maintaining relationships that are emotionally parasitic. Where others invent soothing stories to explain away their shortcomings, the Sigma systematically dismantles his own. He refuses the easy relief that comes from blaming circumstances or other people for his failures. He does not allow himself the luxury of empty affirmations that are not backed by tangible action and results. This unflinching honesty can feel like a form of self-cruelty, a kind of psychological self-flagellation. However, it is this very process that prevents him from the spiritual and intellectual calcification that afflicts so many as they age. While others become hardened in their denial, repeating the same self-defeating cycles year after year, the Sigma is in a constant state of sharpening. Each cycle of self-audit pairs away another layer of dead weight, another illusion, another weakness, leaving him progressively lighter, faster in his adaptability, and clearer in his purpose. Over time, the brutal self-audit evolves into his most potent weapon. By constantly breaking down and rebuilding his own identity, he avoids the ultimate trap, becoming rigid, predictable, and attached to an outdated version of himself. He retains the capacity to reinvent himself, to adapt to new realities, and to evolve his strategies, while others cling desperately to a persona that may have worked for them a decade ago, but is now obsolete. Every successful audit strips him of potential weaknesses that others could exploit. This is not driven by pride, but by a primal instinct for survival and growth. The Sigma understands, on a fundamental level, that the harshest mirror is also the most liberating. While the majority remain prisoners of their own carefully constructed delusions, he achieves a profound freedom by confronting his truths head-on, no matter how deeply they may cut. Stage 9. The unmasking shock. The flash of the true blade. The unmasking shock is a pivotal, often electric, moment in the Sigma's social interactions. After years, sometimes an entire lifetime, of wearing carefully crafted masks and maintaining a composed, controlled exterior, there occurs a fleeting moment where a fraction of his raw, unvarnished self breaks through the facade. The effect on observers is always immediate and polarizing. It is a moment when a quiet, unassuming colleague suddenly delivers an analysis of breathtaking insight and ruthless precision. It is a moment when a laid-back friend, when pushed beyond a certain point, reveals a core of unshakable resolve and intensity that was previously completely hidden. The reactions to this unmasking are never neutral. They split into two distinct camps. One group is instantly and powerfully drawn in, as if by a magnetic force. They are captivated by the sudden gravity of his presence, the palpable weight of his intelligence, and the aura of unshakable confidence that flashes into view. They feel they've been granted a privileged glimpse of something rare and authentic, and they crave more. The other group recoils, visibly unsettled. The realization that the easygoing, harmless person they thought they knew was merely a surface layer is deeply disconcerting. To them, the glimpse of his true depth feels dangerous, like standing too close to fire that is both fascinating and threatening. For the Sigma, both reactions are diagnostically useful. Those who are drawn and confirm the efficacy of his long-held silence and strategic masking. His aloofness has acted as a perfect filter, sifting out the shallow and the weak-willed, allowing only those with the capacity to handle his depth to step closer. Those who recoil and retreat provide an equally valuable confirmation that his true power was never meant for them, and that revealing more would have been a waste of his energy. Their flight is a validation of his selective nature. Stage 10. The longevity play, the slow, relentless burn. The longevity play is the stage where the Sigma's foundational virtues of patience, discipline, and strategic foresight culminate in a decisive, unassailable advantage. In a culture that glorifies the sprint, the rapid ascent, the viral moment, the overnight success, the Sigma embraces the marathon. While everyone else is burning through their mental, emotional, and physical capital in a desperate race for immediate validation, applause, and visibility, he conserves his energy. He is a master of resource allocation, stacking skills, financial assets, and social capital quietly in the background, and he only chooses battles that offer significant strategic return. To the outside world, this can look like a lack of ambition, a slow pace, or even stagnation. The brutality of this stage lies in the immense restraint it requires. The desire for external validation is a powerful, addictive force in the human psyche. The dopamine hit of social media likes, the rush of public recognition, the feeling of being seen, these are the fuels that power the ambitions of the majority. The Sigma, however, undergoes a deliberate and disciplined withdrawal from this addiction. He teaches himself to function and even thrive without it. This emotional and psychological abstinence is what forges his incredible resilience. He does not crumble when the spotlight passes him by, because he never built his foundation upon needing its warmth. He is not chasing the ephemeral glow of recognition. He is building a structure of permanence, and true permanence is a project measured in decades, not in quarterly reports or news cycles. Stage 11. The outsider's advantage, the power of the perimeter. The outsider's advantage is not so much a stage the Sigma enters, but a permanent position he occupies and learns to weaponize. By consistently refusing to fully integrate into any single tribe, hierarchy, or ideology, he gains a unique and invaluable perspective. He is never fully invested in the preservation of any one system, which frees him to see its flaws, its inefficiencies, and its impending collapse with a clarity that is unavailable to those on the inside. Insiders are often blinded by their investment in the status quo. Their identity and success are tied to the system, so they have a psychological incentive to ignore its cracks. The Sigma, operating from the periphery, has no such attachments. He is the eternal nonpartisan observer. This vantage point allows him to identify opportunities that are invisible to those playing by the established rules. He can see gaps in the market, flaws in an argument, and weaknesses in an organization's structure precisely because he is not caught up in its internal culture or dogma. He is the one who can point out that the emperor has no clothes, not out of malice, but from a simple statement of observable fact. Stage 12. The magnetism backlash, the power of indifference. The magnetism backlash is a stage rich with paradox, where the Sigma's greatest social power is activated precisely through a studied indifference to it. In a social ecosystem filled with individuals performing, preening, and amplifying themselves in a desperate bid for attention, the Sigma strategy is one of radical subtraction. He pulls away. He remains quiet. He maintains a palpable distance. He refuses to participate in the performance. And it is this very refusal that becomes irresistibly magnetic. Human psychology is wired to be curious about that which is withheld. When everyone else is loudly declaring their value, the one who remains silent creates a vacuum of information. People cannot help but project their own questions onto his quiet demeanor. Why isn't he playing the game? What does he know that we don't? What is he hiding? This curiosity, once ignited, begins to snowball. The Sigma, who never asked for and may actively dislike the spotlight, suddenly finds himself at the center of a mystery of his own unintentional making. His silence becomes more compelling than another's well-rehearsed speech. His absence from a social gathering is felt more acutely than another's boisterous presence. Strangers and acquaintances alike begin to project their own fantasies and interpretations onto his blank canvas. Some perceive him as a dangerous, enigmatic figure. Others see him as a deep, profound thinker. Some may misinterpret his quiet confidence as arrogance. None of these projections are fully accurate, but their accuracy is irrelevant. The allure lies entirely in the not knowing in the space for imagination that he provides by offering no personal narrative. Conclusion: the uncharted path to sovereignty. Every stage of the Sigma's journey is a study in paradox. His actions are quiet, yet their internal impact is seismic. He remains largely invisible, yet his influence becomes undeniable. From the strategic camouflage of the mass-building era to the necessary annihilation of the ruthless deconstruction, from the internal forge of the quiet rage to the empowering epiphany of the recognition of leverage, each transformational shift strips away another layer of societal illusion and adds a new layer of personal precision. What appears to outsiders as recklessness is, in truth, a higher form of strategy. What looks like passivity is the silent gathering of immense force. What is misinterpreted as detachment is, in fact, the sharpening of a vision so clear it can be painful. As these 12 stages unfold and integrate, the Sigma is transformed into an entity that no conventional system can control and no manipulator can touch. By the time he reaches the contemplative heights of the legacy shift, it becomes undeniably clear that his life was never about playing the established game more effectively or loudly than anyone else. It was about quietly, persistently, and masterfully rewriting the rules of the game from the edges, operating from a paradigm of his own creation. His silence becomes a form of unassailable authority. His absence becomes a tool of immense power. His very existence becomes a form of leverage. Each stage leaves him lighter, less burdened by the non-essential, sharper, more effective in his actions, and freer, more sovereign in his choices. While the world around him increasingly calcifies under the weight of its own collective delusions and compromises, the Sigma remains fluid, adaptive, and potent. This is a true, unvarnished story of the Sigma path. Not a romanticized myth of the lone wolf, but a raw, often painful, evolution of an individual who survives by refusing to conform and ultimately thrives by alchemizing his solitude into an unshakable, self-defined strength. And that is why, decades later, when the voices of the crowd have faded into irrelevance, the Sigma still stands, untouchable, magnetic, and unforgettable.